of
dead
heaven.
period, and it truly is a dead period. But spring standouts. You wrote a piece on Sportsnaut, which is linked below in the description of the show. If you haven't read it yet, which is shame on you if you haven't read it, but you need to go read it. And but you wrote about this, and I think there's some players here, and a couple of them you mentioned. And I want to get to this because, you know, going into training camp, you can take momentum, you know, especially if you're a rookie. You went into rookie mini camp, if you went to OTAs, if you went to voluntary training camp, the mini camp that was held for the Raiders. That, to me, is guys who are in there, they're working, they're putting in the work. Now, there's a downside to that, too, because you could go to those things, it's all the right thing to do, but it might point out that you got more work to do than maybe you thought or maybe the team thought. So let's go through some of these guys, because I think that we've talked about many of them over the months since the season ended, or since they were acquired or drafted by the Raiders. But the premise, you got the premise right there of your piece and kind of what we're looking at as we go through these players.
So basically, I'm just looking at players who either gained some ground,
Forged from the legacies of the militaristic Qin and the cultured Zhao, the Han dynasty of China rules with righteousness tempered with benevolence, with wisdom informed by tradition. Han engineers transformed the land, even as Han philosophers transformed the mind. Go now and take up the mandate of heaven.
Potentially put themselves in a position to have big roles before they did. And with the three winners and losers, and I think spent most time on Dante Gordon. And we talked about Dante Gordon here on the show, but as I said, he is a big winner because he seems to be, based on reports, the biggest star, was the biggest star in spring camp. I want to say, really got a shot for your expectation.
Yeah. No, that's what I was going to start with, because we talked about Dante Gordon through the minicamp portion and talked about that, because you brought up Brian Davis, right? Brian Davis. Yes. So you brought him up, and I remember he was going to be the next coming of every great wide receiver that's ever walked the earth. So we have to be careful with that. But with Dante Fullerton, I think we saw this when you wrote in the piece, you kind of called him, this would have been Al Davis' pick in this year's class, 6'5", 205, 4'3". I mean, Mo, he is every number you want in a player, right? So you have that walking in the door, and then we got reports from our good friend Levi Edwards there about how Smith had built this great rapport with Geno Smith and all this stuff. So he was doing all the right things. But talk a little bit why that's so important for a rookie, especially a guy, he's not a first rounder, he's not a second rounder, he's a fourth rounder. And so for a guy like that to turn that many heads, to have that kind of impression is a big deal.
Right, so there was talk about concerns about his limited route tree. Didn't seem to be a problem at spring workouts, practices. He's getting open, he's beating double teams. Now we'll see what he does with pads on. But at least for now, it looked good when it had to. Right, so OTAs, spring workouts are great for athletic players. Guys to show their speed, hands, all the physical tools you like to see in some of these young guys. So he was able to show that during the spring, and it's a very good sign for his potential role, could be wide receiver 2 at most, because we know Cody Myers is wide receiver 1. Could be wide receiver 2 by some point in the upcoming season. He's progressed well over Trey Tucker and Jack Bash, second round, but we'll see.
Yeah, and then and I just think too that if they can, if he becomes even in year one, if he becomes even 60, 70% of what people think he can become, that's a big deal for this team, especially in that fourth round, especially with size and with what they have going on offense. So now I want to go to another winner you have in your piece, if you don't mind, against the quote-unquote losers or those that struggle. And that's Michael Mayer, right? We talked earlier in the show about the rumors about him being traded. This has been going on since last offseason, including reports that said he was going to for sure be traded, which of course never came true. Then you talked about Omar Kelly's report in the Miami Herald about the Dolphins, and then the Steelers had interest as well, but then of course they got James Smith. You look at Michael Mayer, I think he becomes one of those guys it's easy to forget because he was much valued when he came out. Obviously, second round pick. A lot of people talk about it in this show. And then the turmoil happens in the organization, and then he's got personal issues and he's away from the team for a significant amount of time. I think people forget how good he is and what an asset he can be to his team.
I think people not only forget, but I think there are a lot of people who gave up on it already. And I think
good way to put it.
That's part of the problem with a lot of the successes of these players is a lot of fans expect these players to pop within the first 2 years because they're used to seeing Brock Powers doing what he's doing, Jake Daniels doing what he's doing, and they're like, wow, this is, I can every rookie do that. Why can every early round rookie do that? That's just not the reality. Some guys pop after a year or two. Some guys it takes 3 years. Some guys they have to go to a new team. And they pop in their 6th year. So everyone grows at a different rate. We talked about Michael Barron had some personal issues with the team, basically a
Đêm
year
nay
and a half.
ngọn số mát trên đỉnh Fansipan.
He also played in some bad systems. Think about it. Didn't mesh well with Josh McDaniel's system. Raiders had some turnover with their offensive play calling position last year. He had Puget, he had Scott Turner. So he's been through a lot of change on the opposite side of the ball. Think about how unstable the Raiders have been offensively. So now you get them an innovative, moving offensive play calling Chip Kelly. Let's see what he can do.
Yeah, and remember, 6 games last year he missed. It's 35% of the season, basically, and it was right at the beginning of the season after week 4, after week 3. So that just stunts it. And then, of course, last year with the offense, which was such a, as you mentioned, for all the names, was such a mess. So it's almost like a lost year for him in many ways. I'm not just making excuses to make excuses. It's valid. And you put it out there very well. Okay, now look at some guys who might be in some trouble or at least didn't do themselves any favor. And that's Ja'Cory Bennett, a guy that you and I have been very high on for a long time. But a torn labrum, it's tough to come back from.
Yeah, so he said this is the first time he's had both his shoulders. He's had shoulder issues going back to college. I listed him as a loser, not because I don't think he could still win the starting job, but it's very clear that he's falling behind. Because let me tell you, if Darian Porter continues to impress, the Raiders are probably going to go with the young rookie. Because there's so much upside by starting him early in his career. Eric Stokes has been the other boundary corner. I think Ja'Cory Bennett could probably take his position. If I were betting today, I would say Ja'Cory Bennett and Darian Porter would be your starting boundary cornerbacks. But as of right now, ahead of training camp, Ja'Cory Bennett is behind. He's been playing for the 17 defense. He's coming back off of that shoulder injury. He's got to make up some ground. He can't just show up at training camp and say, well, I played well for 10 games last year. The starting job that have to impress his coaches, particularly Pete Carroll.
And if you go back to minicamp, one of the guys we talked about, surprisingly, was that Jeremy Chin is playing in the slot, right? And we saw that, which is not good news for cornerback DeMar Holmes. Talk about Holmes and his position there, which would be in the slot.
The fact that they're pulling Darnay Holmes off the field for Jeremy Chin to move into the slot and then have Wanda Johnson Jr. play safety tells you how they feel about the slot position. And I'm still surprised they have not signed Mike yet. Yeah. Because he could solve your slot issues and then you wouldn't have to move Jeremy Chin around. Now, part of the beauty of having Jeremy Chin is you can play multiple positions. You can play both safety spots and slot. They want to utilize that versatility, but what's the point then of having Darnay Holmes there and not be a stiff competitor for that spot? Why not just upgrade the slot cornerback position? So, for right now, it looks like Darnay Holmes is going to be a backup. It could be in danger of getting cut, even though he knows Patrick Graham's system is playing in New York.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. But again, this is where when you have a new coaching staff, even Patrick Graham's back, still with the rest of the staff being new, Carroll and some of the players they brought in certainly raises your eyebrows and says, okay, what's going to happen here now? You mentioned Wyatt Johnson just a minute ago. Wyatt Johnson Jr., of course, played with Houston for a long time, and a guy who's really versatile, right? Here's a guy that fits the Pete Carroll mode as far as size goes, 6'2", right, to something. Talk about him, and what we just talked about, if Chin's coming into the slot, then you need another safety back there to go with Colorado. So is he the guy? Is Wyatt Johnson Jr. think he's got it all right?
Yeah, Jeremy Chin moving into the slot is why I love the conversation of being a safety gets beat for the Raiders because Isaiah Fuller-Miles no surefire starter there. Do you bring in Justin Simmons or Jordan Whitehead or John Johnson III to play safety alongside Isaiah Fuller-Miles? But for now, the Raiders' solution at safety when Jeremy Chin moves into the slot is to insert Lonnie Johnson Jr. into the starting role. Now, I remember when Lonnie Johnson Jr. came out of Kentucky, he was a cornerback initially, and he has now transitioned to be a safety who said has the versatility, but it's a Pete Carroll moment. 6'2", 213. Pete Carroll likes his long cornerbacks, defensive backs, so he's got a shot in Pete Carroll's system to be a starter. He has played 83 games in his career, he's only started in 20, so he's been mostly a rotational backup player. We'll see how he does in a future role if Jeremy Chin is in the deputy.
Right? They might have to do that of necessity. But again, I think the Raiders, to your point, I think there are going to be more signings there. But good stuff. If you haven't read this piece, we're going to keep track of these guys, obviously, as they get into camp here in a few weeks. But make sure you go up. It's listed below in the description, both video. We're going to put the audio up on video, too, so your video people don't miss out this week. And then also in the podcast description below, you will see a link directly to Mo's article, which we discussed. We can get a little more detail. Mo was pretty detailed, so we'll get there. All right, we're going to take our final break. We want to leave time for your phone calls here on Silver and Black today. So you want to get in on the next show, 702-900-7869. 702-900-7869 is the number for you to take part in the show. It's Mo and Scott. This is Silver and Black today on the radio, 101.5 KDOM, the Bet in Las Vegas, and also Odyssey Sports Original Podcast. Thank you. Welcome back home stretch here, the final segment of this edition of Silver and Black today. Odyssey Sports Original Podcast, also heard on radio, 101.5 KDOM in Las Vegas, as well as the Bet HD2 in Las Vegas. Hello to our Vegas audience, and hello to Raider Nation all over the world. Wherever you're listening to us, we have listeners in Saudi Arabia, we have listeners in Australia, we have listeners in the UK, you name it, we have listeners. The Raider Nation is international. So is the international man of just mystery and just everything. And that's Mo Moten. He's my partner. At Mo Moten on Twitter, MOEMOTON, X. And I am at LVGoey as we get set for the show, and we get set for your calls. Well, and it seems interesting to have a very familiar voice that's going to lead us off here, which is always interesting. And this call, I actually listened to this whole call, but I really wanted to think through it. So we're going to put some time into this. Are you ready? You sure here? It's not even weird. It's something you don't know. Okay? There we go. All right, here's a call. We're going out to our buddy Murph from Raiders Fan Radio. Of course, you guys know Murph from the Donation Foundation, the work he does there, which we also donate all of our super chats on YouTube, and we're doing that. We'll get those to those guys. But here's Murph.
Scott, Mo, your buddy Murph here, fifth time, long
Do
time.
nothing.
I'm calling because I'm having some thoughts this week. I was posting some videos on social media, and it were old videos from the Oakland days. And I'm finding myself now headed in, to 6 years now, really mourning the loss of the Oakland experience for the Raiders. And I want to get your guys' input on, do you think it would ever get back to even resemble the experience that we had in Oakland in Las Vegas? And I say this is from somebody that loves Las Vegas. I love the kitschiness of it. I love, gambling. I love a full day at Palacio. I love the shows. I love Las Vegas. I love Allegiant Stadium. It is an absolute love letter to the Raiders. And I love
نقابل جميعا مقابلة جيدة على طريق السفر.
Derek calling the timeout to send us to the playoffs, to Chandler Jones spiking Matt Jones' face into the earth, and coming out with that surprise win. That said, I'm not an advocate for violence, but I miss the grittiness of Oakland. And I miss the experience in the electricity of Oakland, not just negatively directed in the form of verbal harassment towards other teams as fans, but just for the organic nature of it and the way that city and that team went hand in hand. And maybe it's taking more to as I get a little bit older, and now with all of my three favorite professional sports teams now leaving the state, that and the stadium and this area that I grew up in, even though I don't live there anymore, and I haven't lived in California for a good minute now, but still, that said, it just really hit me. And so I want to get you guys to take on that. I don't think it's ever going to resemble that ever again. And I think I just need to be okay with that. And I would, encourage other fans, especially older fans like me that didn't spend so much time in the open Coliseum, to just, we got to move past it. It's tough. And so, anyway, just want to get you guys to take on that. Yeah, I know you guys have deal with a team moving, leaving your city, and also you know what it's like being, a sports fan in Las Vegas. Don't live that life. So I'm just curious to see what you guys have to say. I love you guys. Talk to you soon. See you.
Wow, what a great call from Murph there. And something we hear a lot from Raider fans, right? Sometimes with a very negative a narrative with it, meaning, let's talk about it. And then other times just people like Murph who kind of miss that. All of the things that were open, the grittiness, the scene there, the parking, all that stuff, right? And I just want to start with this because I think a couple things. Number one is change is always hard. Doesn't matter what, right? And I pulled two quotes, right? One's from an author named Million Ball. And it says, quote, all changes are more or less tinged with melancholy. For what we are leaving behind is part of ourselves, right? So that's what's at play here. Yes, it has to do with Oakland, because that's where it was. And Raiders were there for 47 years. The two stints, right? For 47 years. That's a long time. And Murph, yes, you didn't live in California. You haven't lived for a while. I haven't lived in California for 15 years either, right? But you still, all those memories, remember, life is about places, no doubt about it. But it's the relationship, it's the people, it's the moments spent with your friend, your father, your mother, your daughter, your son, whoever it was. That's really what you miss. Now, the atmosphere, absolutely, right? Because it was a crazy atmosphere. It's great. So to me, that's what it's about. Is that's part of you, and when part of you no longer is there anymore. No, it doesn't happen. There's no opportunity for it to happen. You just don't know. It's part of you is gone. And there's another famous author, Victor Hugo, right? He says, melancholy is the happiness of being sad. And I thought, no, that was perfect, because that is what melancholy is. It's remembering moments that have gone by, great moments, happy moments, and then feeling bad that they aren't happening anymore, right? Or that they're not, or that they were in the past. It's a normal emotion, and I think with Raider Nation's the most passionate sports fan base there is, that to me is what this is about.
So first I'll say Murph kind of answered his thoughts at the end of his call, where he said, and I'm paraphrasing, Las Vegas is not going to be open. It is not open. No matter what the Raiders do, even if they're winning, it is not going to feel the same as it was in Oakland. Different city, different area, and say you're leaving memories behind. So you can't try to recreate those memories, but it won't be the same. It won't be another black hole in Oakland. That's no matter what happens, you cannot recreate, you cannot duplicate that. And as Murph also said in his call, he's just going to have to move on and deal with that reality, that those memories are those memories. Cherish them. I know Murph had some great memories there. His father, I believe, too, in Oakland, going to games. But now you have to look forward to making new memories. And I now got into moving, right? Most of us have moved at least once in our lives, right? And usually when you move, especially that first move, it's a bit of you're happy for new beginnings, but you're leaving behind your childhood. Maybe you had kids in that home, maybe your family, all types of stuff that you leave behind when you move. But you're looking forward to the next chapter. Looking forward to what's next. And you hold on to those memories from the old place, but then you're looking ahead to, okay, what can we create in the new place? And that's what you have to, that's how you have to do it, in my opinion, when it comes to the Raiders from Oakland to Las Vegas.
Yes, and I just go back to the Victor Hugo quote, melancholy is the happiness of being sad. So you're sad that it's gone, but you're also happy because it's such great memories. And I do the same thing with experiences in my life, whether it was a concert, whether it was a game. Because even in my case, I'm a big San Diego Padres fan. I grew up in San Diego, seeing that old Jack Nicklaus Stadium, which was like the Oakland Coliseum. It was a cookie-cutter stadium. And when they moved to Petco Park, I was so excited. And then I got there and I was like, this place is freaking sterile. This has no character whatsoever. Now, 20 years later, it's one of the best ballparks in the major leagues, and when you go back there, it feels like it's been there forever. So, again, time and the new fans, and I say new fans, younger fans, who didn't experience that, I'm sad that they didn't experience all of that, but at the same time, you're right. You'll see new traditions start in Vegas. Now, maybe they haven't gotten publicity and aren't as big as, like, the greater super fans and all that are that became that way in Oakland, but it'll happen. It'll happen. And I think you said it well, Mo. So, Murph, always great, man. I appreciate you calling in, and I totally feel for everybody who feels the same way. All right, now we're going on to Jesse. Jesse is a quick call, but here's what Jesse has.
My name is Jason.
Why is Jason in? Okay, so Mo, he was a little muddled there, but he said, why do people think the Raiders will be at the bottom of the division? It goes back to a discussion we had over the last couple of weeks, and last week specifically about the Raiders' record, when we saw people telling us they're going to have 11 wins, and we kind of went through that explanation of the last place schedule and how that can be very misleading. For somebody out there who really believes the Raiders can't possibly be the worst team in the division, what would you say to them?
I would say look at the gap that the Raiders have to make up, right? So last year, the Raiders were 6 games behind third place. 6. Let me say that again. The Raiders were 6 games behind third place. So not only were they last in the division last year, they were a distant fourth in the division last year. Every other team won double-digit games. So for the Raiders not to finish fourth this year, you're either A, one of those teams has to regress. You're saying Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs fall off the mantle in the AFC West. They've been reigning over the AFC West for quite some time now. The Chargers, who have Jim Harbaugh, who's won everywhere he's been, all of a sudden regress. Even though they added more pieces to their offense. Or the Denver Broncos somehow, with Sean Payton, who is another proven Super Bowl winning head coach, regress, even though people are now saying that they may have the best defense in the league with Jade Barron there, with Taloha Hufanga there, added in free agency. So you're saying that for the Raiders to not finish last, one, they have to make a big jump, and two, one of those 3 teams has to regress quite significantly because they all won double-digit games for playoff games.
It would be shockingly degrading themselves.
Right. So my point is, it's all about perspective. The Raiders can be a lot better than they were last year, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be out of last place in the division because they can finish 8 and 9, double their win total, and still finish last in the division if every other team holds court and finishes with double-digit wins again. So it's a very tough task and arguably the toughest division in the league.
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders could have what I think would be a very, very good year and win 9 games and still be in last place title of the AFC.
Exactly.
Right, so, and I know a lot of people are going to come at us and say, well, the Broncos are going to suck. Listen, that's the fan hat. I get it. Oh, the Chargers are always overrated. That is true, but they've only had Jim Harbaugh now going into the second year. That's a whole different situation. It's a whole different. You cannot look at 3 or 4 or 5 years ago and say, well, the Chargers were overrated, which they were. I'm not disagreeing with you. But, different day. Just like it's a different day for the Raiders, as you guys are all saying, and I agree with that. But it's a tough division, man. I think it's finally going to be as good as we thought it was going to be like 3 or 4 years ago, which it wasn't, because each of these teams has gotten better, and we'll see. But yeah, injuries can certainly change. I mean, sometimes to Patrick Mahomes, God forbid, something happens to any starting quarterbacks or a big player on any of these rosters, and things can change very quickly. That can happen. But again, I don't think you counted it, so we'll see what happens. All right, Jason, thank you so much for your call. Now we're going out to our buddy Jacob in Fresno. We haven't heard from him in a couple of weeks. I don't know if he's been on vacation, getting tan, getting that Speedo on, what he's doing. But here's Jacob.
Doing. ambiguous question. It was open to a lot of interpretation, I guess I should say. There's a lot of room for answers. This one is a lot more definite and specific. I asked you guys, what do we need to fix on the defense? But I realized, I kind of already know. I think we all know. I think we all look at this defense and we say we don't really have a solid starting safety. We don't have somebody who is reliable, has great experience, and it's a little, how would you say, scary, frightening. I'm perturbed. I'm disturbed. I am looking at this situation at safety and wondering what it is that we're going to do. But the thing is, John Slytek seems to be doing several sneaky good moves. Like I was telling the guys at Raiders Fan Radio, I keep thinking I'm going to see on the news tomorrow, Aaron Donald signed a 7-year deal for $1 million with the Raiders. That's not what we're doing. How is the guy available for what you got? He makes sense. Doesn't make sense. What? That being said, I am tossing the PS5 controller over to you guys. We're going to edit roster right now. What are we doing? Who are we picking up at 3-8? Or what are we doing with our safety as it is right now? Do we have somebody? Do you disagree? Do you think that maybe a guy like Trey Taylor's going to come over and take over the roster? He just needs an opportunity. He just needs to be put in that spot. Or do you trust Jeremy Chin? Or, I don't know. I don't see it from guys like Isaiah Palomar. I think the guy's a great special teamer. He's going to be a good depth piece to hold on to. But right now, I don't see that person who's taking the position. And I think when we have that, we recognize we don't really have somebody. We need somebody right there. That seems to be the big hole. What are you guys doing with that PS5 controller? What are you doing? What are you thinking of? You already got that. Appreciate you. You take it easy. God bless you. And go Raiders.
All right, Jacob at Fresno. We got a couple of minutes left, Mo. I think you kind of answered this earlier, and I agree with him on the safety situation, but also cornerback. And I think interior defensive line, if Christian Wilkins has a big setback and he's missing significant time, then the Raiders need to think about how they can go acquire somebody. And it might not be a free agent, it might be a trade. I don't know, but there's definitely work to be done on that roster.
Yeah, the two names I mentioned earlier in the show, you grab Mike Hilton to fill the slot cornerback position, so you don't have to move Jeremy Chin as the safety position. You solve basically two needs with one move. Or if you want to keep Jeremy Chin in the slot, you sign Justin Simmons at safety. He's a center fielder. Still get those turnovers in the back end. Raiders have had trouble forcing turnovers in recent years since Charles Woodson and Reggie Nelson were back there at the safety spot. So Mike Hilton at outside cornerback, Justin Simmons at safety. That'll solve your secondary issues.
There we go. Okay, we're going to get in real quickly. We got one more call. It's up, buddy. It's Eric in Chicago. It's Eric.
What's up, Scott and Mo? Eric calling you guys from Chicago. Happy 1st of July. I want to start off by saying one thing.
That's why they gave you the big buck.
So don't think that fire protected side of team. That's incredible how people are blowing it out of proportion. He got that fire with him on the sideline. And, it's amazing how someone can take something and just completely try to take it out of context. Great to see he has that side, and I can't wait for him to see what he can do with this upcoming season. Regarding your guys' personal after, regarding the running back room, obviously Gentry, thinking Mozart is a savvy veteran, and I think he's going to definitely play the backup to Gentry. He's a smart, savvy veteran. He's seen and done it all. His experience will certainly pay off in this really young quarterback room. For the third guy, I'd love to see McCormick. Obviously, you got to stay healthy, improve blocking and things of that nature, but I think he's got a really, really good feeling, and he's got a good burst, and I think he would complement Gentry really, really well. I won't be surprised if Dylan Lowry makes the roster. Same goes for Samir White. Lowry did little to nothing last year. I don't even see him making the practice squad. Samir White, he's a tall job, and he looks the part, but really has little to no impact when given a golden opportunity to have the season car. So, you got to have some depth, but I do think Gentry, Mozart, and McCormick will round out the three of the guys with running back, in our running back room. Regarding all-time great defensive end, obviously we got Max Crosby, I love how he won. Khalil Mack is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I will say shame on you, John Gruden. for Jensen in his prime when he was just tearing it up for us. Kevin Hendricks, Ben Davidson, and I also love using Brett Townsend. I think it is a travesty that Townsend is not in the Hall of Fame. 109.5 career sacks. I think that is absolutely ridiculous. Hope you guys are having a great summer. Looking forward to your show this week, and I'll talk to you guys later. All
right, there's Tarek in Chicago. Mo, we have about 30 seconds. I don't know that the Raiders are done at running back either.
We'll see. Raheem Mostert has an injury history, so I think if Sincere McCormick can stay healthy, maybe they are done. But Sincere McCormick could stay healthy last year, had a short stint, only played 5 games, got her at the top, her in the top. So if they have an injury concern there between McCormick and Mostert, I can see them adding another running back, especially Bill Hubbie and Samir White. Do not.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating to watch. And good stuff from all of you. 702-900-7869. 702-900-7869 is the number. Mo, before we Mo, every end of the show this past month, I've stumbled on my words. I don't know what it is. I'm so excited to get done with it. I don't know what it is. Anyway, Mo, let everybody know what you got coming up this week so they can follow you and keep track of your work.
BR creators, BR lives, whatever you want to call them. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 9 p.m. sometimes it's Pacific. Be there. We're going to have some fun topics. Now that it's July, it's the summer. Have some fun things to talk about over on Sports Night. As always, I'll have a piece there talking to you about what to head toward training camp for specifically position battles. And that's why I'll project my early winners for some of the contested spots on the roster.
All right, there you go. Make sure you follow Mo on X, Mo Moton, MODMOTON. The show is SNB Today. I am at LB Going there if you want to chat with us. Also, just a favor, make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you get it. You don't have to wait for us on the radio. We appreciate you being there too. But make sure you subscribe wherever you get your audio rate and review. And do us a favor, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel where we usually have the video version of the show. This week we do not. It's audio, but nonetheless, there. I want to thank you for being with us.
There is another one.
I'm Scott Branson. Thanks to our producer at Odyssey, Mike Robier, and our executive producer in Las Vegas, Mark Bonilla. Take care, Raider Nation, and we will talk to you next week.
It was once told to me, if you have a quarterback, you have a chance. So what kind of chance do the Raiders have in 2025 with their quarterback, Geno Smith? We'll break that down plus more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for July 7th, 2025.
You are the Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome here, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page. You know, we appreciate both. The show continues to grow each and every day because of your consistent support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day by way of the YouTube page. We definitely appreciate him. We shot him out just like we shot you out, Raider Nation. Even in the off season, even with this slower time of the year, you tune in each and every day. And we appreciate that. So hats off to you. Hats off to Ari. If you want to check out Ari, he's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can find me as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line 707-654-4693. Normally we'll hear from you closing out the show. Segment number 3, calls and texts. Today we don't have that because segment number 2 and segment number 3 are going to be about Geno Smith, quarterback, and what kind of advantage the Raiders will have in 2025 when they're going up against their teams that they're playing, right? So John McClain used to write for the Houston Chronicle for a very long time. He's a Hall of Fame writer, Hall of Fame just dude in general. I caught up with him over the weekend. I was in Texas, had an opportunity to catch up with him, and we started talking about the NFL, started talking about quarterbacks, started talking about teams that made a move from either worst to first or just being in a bad position to all of a sudden being in the playoffs. And he said the key to the Q is you have to have a quarterback. If you have a quarterback, you have a chance. So what kind of chance do the Raiders have in 2025 going up against the teams on their schedule? We'll break that down in segment 2 and segment 3. Segment number 2 will go from game 1 to game 7, and then they go into their bye week, and then after that we'll finish off in segment number 3 the rest of the schedule of the regular season. So that's what we'll consume segment number 2 and segment number 3. Segment number 1, news and notes of the day, kinda. We'll jump into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, off top, I mentioned that I was in Texas. I was hanging out with John McClain. Was supposed to play in John McClain's softball game that he has at Baylor University, Getterman Stadium, each and every year. I've been blessed to be able to play in that game. It's a whole lot of fun. I enjoy going there, hanging out, talking some trash, also picking up some knowledge from John McClain. But it rained. The whole time that we were there in Central Texas, Thursday through Sunday, it did nothing but rain. So the game got canceled. We didn't get to play. So that was our disappointment. But there was much bigger issues going on in Texas when it came to rain and came to flooding. As a matter of fact, as of Sunday night, 82 people had died in connection with the flash flood that struck Central Texas. The toll included at least 28 children in Kerr County, where 10 girls and one counselor from Camp Mystic are still unaccounted for. And again, that was as of Sunday night. So our thoughts and prayers definitely go out to those families that are dealing with that. That's a tragedy. All I did is not get to play in a softball game. No big deal, right? No sweat off my back. But this is a massive thing. And I know that we have Raider fans that listen to this show from all over the country, all over the world, including Texas, including Kerr County. So, yeah, definitely want to make sure we set out those thoughts and prayers. And just awful to hear about that. But that definitely impacted everything that went on in Central Texas and Texas in general over the 4th of July weekend. So hopefully, there'll be some kind of closure with those families, and they'll be able to, the ones that are unaccounted for, authorities will be able to find them sooner rather than later. But just an awful way to, just think about family gathering and everything 4th of July weekend, and they have to deal with that. So again, thoughts and prayers go out there. Also, when we talk about thoughts and prayers, we looked to a member of Raider Nation. I did not know this guy, Raider Mort, but apparently a ton of Raider fans do. Big-time member of Raider Nation, and I know it's big, and I know it's important, and I know it's serious when the Raiders tweet about a member of Raider Nation passing away. They tweeted out on Sunday night, the Raider family formed the passing of Raider Mort, a deeply passionate fan of the Silver and Black and a cherished part of Raider Nation. Mort attended games all over the world and supported the Raiders with a rare ardent fervor. An expert on team history and trivia, Mort's lifelong love of the Raiders was an inspiration to fans everywhere. The prayers of the Raider Nation are with Mort's family at this time. Again, I did not come across Raider Mort, so I did not know him, but I know a lot of members of Raider Nation that did know him. And I saw a lot of people tweeting about him. Social media was pretty on fire when it came to Raider Mort and his passing. So we definitely want to make sure we show that love. Matter of fact, my colleague, JT the Brick, I know he knew him really well, so he was tweeting about him also. So again, definitely want to make sure to pass that along. Today, we've got the Raider Squad, something that we've been doing now. It's new to the Locked On Podcast Network. More Raider content. It is not in place of this show. It is in addition to this show. Chantel Chan, Lincoln Kennedy, and myself, we've done 2 shows so far, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. We've been doing that Monday and Wednesday. We did that last week. We're going to do it Monday and Wednesday again this week. So with today being Monday, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, myself, Chantel, and Lincoln Kennedy will be talking all things Raiders, talking about biggest concern for the Raiders this season, offense, offensive line, defense, whatever we come to mind, that'll be our main feature. But it's 1 hour long, 1 hour strong, live stream, really good stuff. I've heard some really good feedback, but it's only been a couple shows, so we're going to continue to try to get it better and better and better each and every week, or each and every episode, I should say. And whenever I get an opportunity to catch up with Lincoln Kennedy and talk with Lincoln, it's on 1 hour long, 1 hour strong. Today being Monday, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. Myself, Chantel, and Lincoln Kennedy will be talking all things Raiders, talking about biggest concern for the Raiders this season, offense, offensive line, defense, whatever we come to mind, that'll be our main feature. But it's 1 hour long, 1 hour strong, live stream, really good stuff. I've heard some really good feedback, but it's only been a couple shows, so we're going to continue to try to, today being Monday, place of this show, it is in addition to this show. Chantel Chan, Lincoln Kennedy, and myself, we've done 2 shows so far, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. We've been doing that. Pass that along. Today, we've got the Raider Squad, something that we've been doing now. It's new to the Locked On Podcast Network. More Raider content. It is not in place of this show. It is in addition to this show. Chantel Chan, Lincoln Kennedy, and myself, we've done 2 shows so far, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time. We've been doing that Monday and Wednesday. We did that last week. We're going to do it Monday and Wednesday again this week. So with today being Monday, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, myself, Chantel, and Lincoln Kennedy will be talking all things Raiders, talking about biggest concern for the Raiders this season, offense, offensive line, defense, whatever we come to mind, that'll be our main feature. But it's 1 hour long, 1 hour strong, live stream, really good stuff. I've heard some really good feedback, but it's only been a couple shows, so we're going to continue to try to get it better and better and better each and every week, or each and every episode, I should say. And whenever I get an opportunity to catch up with Lincoln Kennedy and talk with Lincoln, it's always great to talk some silver and black. So depending on what time you're listening to this or watching this show, it may already be over. It might be on the way up. But if you're a subscriber to the Locked On Raiders podcast, the YouTube page, or just wherever you find your favorite podcast, you can get the Raiders Squad show. Again, new to the Locked On Podcast Network, Chantel Chan, Lincoln Kennedy, and myself, 7:30 a.m. this morning. So, also, as we close out segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, I mentioned John McClain. I mentioned what he said. If you have a quarterback, you have a chance. So what kind of chance do the Raiders have in 2025? We'll go up and down their schedule, starting off with the first half of the season. In segment number 2, where are the advantages? Is it with the Raiders and Geno Smith or the other team? We'll break that down. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that is Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. The easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merchandise, or even just invite a bigger group to go with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Price on the app actually drop the closer you get to the first pitch, and they've got incredibly great last-minute deals. Clear seat views and the lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. And that's what I like. I like, obviously, the lowest price guarantee. That's fantastic. But when you have the seat view, when you can actually click on a seat, see it, and know exactly what it's going to look like when you sit there, I think that's a game changer. How many times have you bought a ticket to a game thinking it was in a really good section, then you get there and you're like, okay, this was all right. Well, you won't have that kind of issue with Game Time. It's right there on the app. You've got it covered, and they've got it covered. Last-minute tickets, zone deals, savings like 10% off exclusive zone deals for everything that they've got going on. Right now, take a guess, we're going to buy tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. My guy, John McClain, Hall of Fame voter, Hall of Fame writer, Hall of Fame guy in general, been covering the NFL for more years than I've been alive. Fantastic dude, one of the reasons that I'm here in Las Vegas right now. He's always been a guy that looked out for me when I was at ESPN Central Texas. He's the guy that I have on my radio show each and every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time. Just a fantastic guy. Always love to talk with him, talk all things NFL, and really just like to listen. Right, he's one of those guys that he has so many stories, so many good, just kind of conversation pieces when it comes to the NFL. A lot of times, I just like to listen and soak up knowledge. Well, when we were in Central Texas, getting ready for the softball game, even though we didn't get to play in it, so many people that know I'm in Vegas now and cover the Raiders, they kept asking me, how are the Raiders going to do this year? How are they going to do this year? And I kept saying, look, they have a lot of talent on paper. They have a new quarterback in Geno Smith, and Pete Carroll is there. There's a lot of excitement. When they play in the AFC West, it's going to be difficult. Remember, they were a team that won 4 games a season ago. So it was funny. John jumped in and said, yeah, you're right. The Texans were in that position at one time. They were in a really bad position, even though the division that the Houston Texans play in is never going to be as tough as the AFC West.
Show that's on the Locked On Network. Of course, Q is still doing his thing as well, give you that Raiders content daily. So this is just in addition to that. And also, we're going to be on twice a week. This week, it's Monday and Wednesday, obviously, at 7:30 a.m., but it's going to be twice a week throughout the year, throughout the season. So it's giving you more Raiders content for Raider Nation.
From the summit of these pyramids,
guys, before we get started into
40 centuries of history look down upon you.
I thought this first show was great. It's always fun to hop on here and talk with you and talk with Big Link and talk Raiders. I mean, especially now 3 weeks out from training camp, there's a lot of anticipation. There's a lot of excitement. I know Raider Nation is pretty lathered up and ready to see what it's going to look like under head coach Pete Carroll. And again, there's a lot of anticipation. So, yeah, I mean, the more the better. I think it's fantastic, and it's only going to get better from here.
Well, I'm in a good place, guys, whenever I can talk Raiders football. There's no doubt about that. So, I thought it was good. I thought the show went good. I thought the chemistry worked out well. We got a long way to go. Obviously, it's going to be a long season, but this is a great start, so I'm happy with it.
Yeah, and shout out to everyone that liked the video, that dropped a comment. We do appreciate you. And of course, if you're a new Raider Nation viewer, or I mentioned this in the first episode, a Raider Nation hater, we want you to join us too and listen to all the content. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. And we've got a lot to get to coming up on the show. We are going to take a deep dive into the Raiders defense this season, a couple of missing pieces, and of course some changes as well. We're going to take a look into that secondary. There was a pretty big name that was tweeted out, or I guess it's on X now, so I don't know what it's X'd out. I don't know. Okay.
It's always Twitter.
You know what you mean?
Yeah, okay. But yeah, Adam Schefter had tweeted out that TJ Watt could possibly be on the move. We're going to talk about how the Raiders could possibly be connected in that, or if we even believe that he's going to be moved at all. And we are going to take a deep dive into the AFC West as well. We'll let you know, who we think is the best, who we think is the worst. We're going to get into all of that. But I think we got to start off with the biggest news this offseason for the Raiders, in my opinion. It was when the Raiders made the move to get Geno Smith, and obviously I think they got him for a pretty good price, right? They traded a draft pick, and I think that told us everything in terms of what the Raiders wanted to do moving forward. I think that told us that in the draft, they probably weren't going to draft one of the top-ranked quarterbacks, and the Raiders did end up drafting a quarterback in the draft, but it wasn't what we kind of thought. However, I think this kind of just shows that the Raiders were looking for, a veteran quarterback, someone that can come into this Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly system, and they broke with Geno. And I think the biggest question is, we've seen some great highlights, during OTAs and whatnot. Training camp is less than a month away, and it poses the question, guys, with the Raiders making this move, is Geno Smith a top 15 quarterback in the NFL? We'll start off with you first.
When I was doing my research for this, I was looking at the top tier quarterbacks and going through the rankings. Naturally, I think when a football mind, a football audience comes to you, they're going to automatically put certain names at the top, which is rightfully so. You got your guys like Jalen, Josh Allen, and then you've got, Patrick Mahomes. I'm slipping up there because I'm getting twisted on my words. But to answer your question, I do believe he's a top 15 quarterback. And I think he's right outside the top 10. Because when I did my ranking, that's where he fell in my ranking. Now, mind you, I did not watch a lot of Seattle football over the last couple of years. So I can't necessarily go for what the analytic grade that I've seen on the number of spots that have for him. But I do know this after watching him a couple days of practice, after watching some older film on him. Yes, he's a veteran, established quarterback who knows his way around football.
He heard
which
the
bodes well for this young Raider team with offensive weapons, young offensive weapons at that. But as far as magnifying and producing it and taking it to the next level, that has yet to be seen. Because as we talked about in our first episode, it's a team game. So you can't just emphasis on one play. But I do know this, and I've always said this. In order, you can win if you have a quarterback. And I think Geno Smith is in that top 15 where it's talking about.
The funny thing about it is, every time I thought about Geno Smith before he officially became a member of the Raiders, I thought, Geno Smith, okay, that's cool. But it was never anything that got me super excited, fired up until I started doing, like Lincoln just said, started doing a little bit more research and read a couple articles, and Geno Smith is the top 10 quarterback. I'm like, wait, what? So I reached out to multiple people, and they broke it down to me in a way that I thought, okay, wait, hold on, that makes sense. And then his shortcomings that he had in Seattle, especially last year, were for him trying to do too much, for him trying to feel like he had to put the team on his shoulders, and he's trying to, force balls in the red zone, especially where you have to be careful. You can't be walking on eggshells in the red zone, but you also got to protect the ball. So he did a bad job of that. He didn't have an offensive line to help out. Took 50-something sacks last year. That was only second to Caleb Williams. That's not going to get it done. But now that you see that there is a run game, or you believe that there's going to be a run game, you see that there's weapons around him. Pete Carroll obviously knows him. I started looking at it and thinking, okay, I see where they're coming from. And oh, by the way, he's also a guy that's very accurate when it comes to the deep ball. And that's the element of the Raiders' offense that's been missing for some years now. That's always been a staple of the Raiders' offense. I don't care who the head coach was. I don't care who, the coordinators were. It was always, speed kills, get them down the field, take a deep shot, Gino can do that if he has the guys to throw the ball too. He has multiple guys that I believe can get down the field. Now, obviously, they've got to develop their chemistry, right? They're not going to get that done in July.
An
They're going to have to
eye
get that
for
done in training camp, preseason, and into the regular season. But I think he does have an opportunity to be that top 15 and even closer to top 10, as Lincoln pointed out.
Yeah, I think when you take a look at Geno Smith, the beginning of his career, you know, a lot of things didn't go well for him, and I think when he got to Seattle, he was kind of in the perfect situation. And here with the Raiders, they're surrounding guys around Geno, and they're going to try to make it as easy for him as it can be. I think in terms of the O-line, there's still some questions there. I mean, a quarterback is only going to be as good as their O-line, right?
Speak on it. Speak on it.
I don't like that. Like, I don't
Speak
like
on
that.
it. That's right. Talk about it.
Yeah, we're gonna do that definitely here on this show. But you know, I want to go through some names because I gotta play devil's advocate here. Okay, we gotta keep it real on the Raiders squad show. So I'm gonna give you some names, and then you guys tell me if he's better than the quarterback that I named. And if it's a toss up, then that's cool too. Lamar Jackson.
No.
Josh Allen.
No.
Joe Burrow.
No.
Brock Purdy.
I don't think so. I think it's close, but I don't think so. And the reason I say that is I like Brock Purdy a lot coming out of Iowa State. I didn't think he was going to be drafted Mr. Irrelevant, and I didn't know what he was going to end up doing with the 49ers given their situation. But I thought Brock Purdy was a really good quarterback. He's actually a guy that when he was in the draft, I was thinking, yeah, maybe the Raiders could get him in round 4, round 5. He ends up dropping to be Mr. Irrelevant. The 49ers pick him up. I think it's really close. I think he has an opportunity to be at that Brock Purdy level, maybe even better given what he does this season.
In my estimation, it's a little bit unfair of a comparison because the way I look at it, and I know we're doing it for conversation, the way I look at it, Brock Purdy got his start. He took full advantage of that offense and that system.
Yep.
And I'm not saying this is a quarterback, I'm going to use that phrase, I know people hate that phrase, but he took full advantage of that system. He went to his go-to guys. He went to McCaffrey. He went to his tight end Kittle. He went to his wide receiver. And they ran a very simple offense. They were also enhanced with an offensive line and a stitch defense, which made it hard on opposing teams to not have to pass to keep up. So with that estimation, I think it's really close. When I evaluate these two quarterbacks side by side, I think Brock Purdy is on his way up. And as we've seen over the last couple of years, defensive coordinators have kind of got a little bit of a drop on him and started to figure him out a little bit, started to figure out a little bit of his tendency. Took a step back from all that success he initially had. That natural injuries and other, circumstances is what it is. But I really think it's a close. I agree with you. I think it's a close toss.
Yeah, he walked into a really good situation. I apologize. Yeah, he walked into a really good situation where even at the weapons Geno had last year, they weren't all in place, including the offensive line and the run game wasn't there. That's why if Geno's given that same opportunity, he definitely can be that guy. The other thing I'll say, as I mentioned, I like Brock Purdy a lot about Iowa State. I always feel like Iowa State players are prepared to play in the league. And by the way, the Raiders have one in Darian Porter Jr. Just to throw that out there too.
Yeah, we might talk about him a little bit later, actually. But I'll say this: I hate it when people hate on a quarterback that's good in the system, because as long as you're efficient as a quarterback, hey, that's a dub, right? And I think a lot of people were saying Brock Purdy got overpaid, but I think he kind of earned it, and his talent kind of football right here. So sometimes it might look absolutely ridiculous. I'm okay with y'all saying that that's awesome. Jaden Daniels.
Well, he's young. I think Jaden's more dynamic. I think he's more of a dynamic player than Geno Smith is, but it's also only going into year 2 of Jaden Daniels, and there could always be a little bit of regression. We don't know. I know that I was a big fan of Jaden when he was at LSU and he won the Heisman Trophy. I know the Raiders were big fans of Jaden Daniels when he was in the draft process. Obviously, they didn't land him. He is a dynamic player who has a lot of, in my opinion, Lamar Jackson tendencies with a little bit better Lamar Jackson accuracy, if that makes sense. So I like Jaden Daniels a lot. I think that he's much more dynamic than Geno Smith. But again, that's not a slight to Geno. It just shows, kind of give the credit to Jaden how good he is.
The quarterback position is very
Ego, Octavianus Augustus Caesar.
And the overall stats. But one thing I take into consideration is a few years ago when I saw Patrick Mahomes get his first start with Kansas City, and he was out of Oakland, and I was on the sideline, and I could not believe some of the things that he improvised and did on the run. And they can make it look so easy. And I go back to quarterbacks like Russell Wilson, when he was in Seattle. He was known as Mr. Improvise because he would make plays out of broken plays, whether it was running around, chucking it downfield. So I believe with today's quarterback, the overall standard has to be mobile in some sense. You cannot be a pure pocket passer. That's a change from where it was a couple generations ago. Now we see Jaden Daniels, now we see the Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, and how these guys use their legs to get around and to make things happen. And I think that's sort of what we come to expect by today's quarterback. It's an unfair comparison because to me it's almost like apples and oranges. It's not the same thing. You got two different players. But what you need as a quarterback is to be a playmaker. Jaden Daniels last year for the Commanders was a playmaker. Got them to the playoffs. That's what you want out of your quarterback play. And as Q said, he's young. He may go through a sophomore slump. Defensive coordinators will get a knock on him, see what he can do. But as long as you're blessing him with good players around him, which the Commanders did last year, then I think he can be talented. Same thing I say about Geno Smith. You've got to complement him with good players around him in order for him to be effective. Now, Geno's not the most mobile quarterback, but he's not the most, he's not an old fake man. He's just stand still as a quarterback in the backfield. So you've got to improvise. That's up to Chip Kelly to make sure he gets that right, and it has to be creative to bring the best out of Geno.
Yeah, the thing for Lincoln is that, and I remember you used to say this all the time about Rich Gannon, who was your quarterback, is that he wasn't the fastest guy. He wasn't Lamar Jackson. He wasn't going to run around the field. But when he would get to the line of scrimmage and he would realize that a play wasn't there, but he would see that, hey, I can take off for 8, I can take off for 9, I can tuck it and run and pick up a first down and keep a drive going. He was willing to do that. He had that willingness to do that. And I think that that's what really helped him become not only a great passer of the ball, but also a commander of the field. And that was something after Derek Carr broke his ankle, he wasn't willing to do. He wasn't willing to take off. You have to have that willingness. Geno does have the willingness. So I think that if the mobility you see from Geno will probably be closer to what it was with Rich, where he'll take off when he sees 8 yards of green grass. Okay, I can go pick up this first down, extend this drive, let's do it. But he's not something that he's going to be a go-to all the time for.
And I also feel like Jaden Daniels' ceiling is a little bit higher because he's so young still. So I'll say that. And also, Derek Carr was never the same after he broke his ankle, right? Like, we definitely know that. So obviously, this was a little bit more of a deep dive than we thought. But we're going to take a break. I think we'll kind of pick it up in the next segment, guys. I'll ask you a couple more quarterbacks that may possibly be better than Geno Smith. We're also going to take a look at the AFC West. So keep it locked here on the Raider Squad Show. We'll be back.
An eye for an eye.
First. All right, summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. If you're already following the action, why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. And it's an easy way to use, fast to pay out. It makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. And of course, with FanDuel, the thing I love about FanDuel is as soon as you win, it takes maybe like max 30 minutes for you to get your payout. So whether you're winning $50, $100, or $2,000, maybe even higher than that, if you are a big bettor, this is a great way to earn some extra little money on the side if you got a side hustle. But FanDuel, the great thing about them is I feel like not only do they have some of the best odds in the marketplace for a sports betting book, but you're definitely getting your payout pretty quickly, and that is absolutely amazing. And so make sure to check out FanDuel if it is available where you're at. Right now, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, guys. So I think we kind of got to stick with what we were talking about because the comments are definitely rolling in right now. And, I think this just